Quick recap of Sunday before we get into today. On Sunday, I broke down the three types of bottlenecks that show up in every CPA firm. The first was the decision bottleneck. Work stops because decisions wait for you. Knowledge, bottleneck, edge cases route to you because your judgment lives in your head. And the third type of bottleneck is the relationship bottleneck. Key clients are here for you personally, not your firm. And I made one point that I wanted to carry into today. Each bottleneck exists because you're protecting something that's real. Decisions bottleneck, just think about it. Owners are protecting quality outcomes. In the knowledge bottleneck situation, owners are protecting standards. And in the relationship bottleneck, owners are protecting trust. The fix doesn't work unless it preserves what you're protecting. I asked you to write one word at the end of Sunday, whether it's decision, whether it's knowledge, or relationship. If you wrote decision, today is specifically for you. And if you wrote the other two, well, stay because the decision bottleneck is always almost the first one to fix. It creates the foundation for everything else to sit on. And here's the problem you're solving today. Your team knows roughly what to do in most situations. But the moment something requires real judgment, a call that isn't black and white, a situation with competing considerations, it comes to you. Not because your team in itself is incapable, but because your judgment isn't encoded anywhere that they can access. Today, I'm going to show you how to change that, specifically step by step with something you can build before Sunday. Before I give you the process, I need to clear what a decision framework is not. First, it's not a flowchart. It's not a policy document. It's not a list of rules that your team is supposed to memorize and apply robotically. Those things exist in most firms already, and most teams ignore them in within 60 days because rules without reasoning are just friction. Here is what a decision framework actually is. One, it's your reasoning made visible. It's your reasoning made visible, not what to decide, but why you decided it. The factors you weigh in, the context that shifts the answer. The line between the situations that look similar but they require completely different responses. When your team reads a real decision framework, they shouldn't feel like they're reading a policy. They should feel like they're sitting inside your head watching you think. That's what makes it usable because it doesn't just tell them what to do, it tells them how to think about what to do. And when they can think about it the way you want them to think, they can handle situations you haven't anticipated yet. And that's the difference between a rule and a framework. Rules cover known cases, frameworks cover unknown ones. Every decision every decision framework has three components and in this order. The first one is the trigger. This is the first component. This is what situation activates this framework. Be specific. No client complaint starts too broad. A client questions after a fee after work has been delivered. That's a trigger. A client requests work outside the original scope of an active engagement. That's a trigger. The trigger defines exactly when the framework applies. Too broad, and your team won't know when to use it. Too narrow, and it won't cover enough situations to be useful. Write the trigger as one specific sentence. The more specific, the more useful. The second component is the decision criteria. This is your reasoning made visible, not a list of rules, a list of questions your team asks themselves to arrive at the right call. Here is a real example of a fee dispute trigger. Was the scope clearly communicated in writing before the work began? If yes, hold the fee. If no, that's a firm process failure and a partial accommodation that is appropriate. Is this client in the first 12 months within the firm? If yes, the relationship is still being established. Different weight on accommodation versus a 10-year client. Is the concern about quality of the work or the expectation of price. Those are different problems requiring different responses. Each question is a factor you already weigh in when you make this decision. You've been weighing them implicitly for years. The framework makes it explicit. The third component is the escalation line. Not every decision should be handled independently. The framework must define exactly what that line is, not vaguely, but specifically. If the client is requesting a reduction of more than 20%, uh, escalate to the owner. That's a line. If the client has been with the firm for more than 5 years and has never raised a concern before, escalate. That's a line. The escalation line does two things. It gives the team confidence they won't be penalized for decisions above the authority, and it tells you exactly which decisions still need you to stop which and it tells you which decisions still need you, so you stop being pulled into everything that is below that line. So I want you to build one right now while this is still fresh. Pick the decision that comes to you most frequently, the one your team asks most about, the one you've answered so many times that it feels obvious to you but isn't apparently obvious to them. And that is your starting point. Step one, write the trigger, one sentence, the specific situation that creates this decision. Step two, think back to the last 5 times you handled the situation. What did you look at? What made you go one way was another? What piece of information changed the answer? Write those factors down, not the answers. The factors, the questions you asked yourself. Step three, draw the escalation line. What version of this situation is above your team's authority? Dollar amount, client tenor threshold, our relationship sensitivity marker. Be specific. That is your framework. One page, probably less. Better it will be less. Now, test it. Take it to one team member, give them a real scenario, a situation from the last month where they came to you with this exact decision type. Ask them to use the framework to arrive at the answer. Then compare the answer to what you have done. If they match, the framework is working. The judgment is transferred. If they don't match, then the framework is still missing a factor. Go back to step two and add the factor that produced the gap. That gap between their answer and yours is not a failure. It's a diagnostic. It's showing you what exactly is missing. And repeat this thing until they match. Now, I want to address the thing every decision bottleneck owner is thinking right now. What if they use the framework and still get it wrong? And here's my honest answer. They might. Yes. The first few times, they might get it totally wrong. But here's what I want you to think about. Right now, without a framework, how often do decisions get made the way you would like them to make them, the way you would like to make them when you are unavailable? And the honest answer for most firms is inconsistently because, well, sometimes not, depending on who's handling it. And what they remember is from the last time a similar situation came up is they took it to the owner. So a framework, even an imperfect one, produces more consistent outcomes than no framework at all. Because it gives your team a structure for thinking rather than relying on memory and instinct. And the framework improves every time the answer doesn't match yours. You add a factor, you refine the criteria, the escalation line gets more precise. Within 30 days of active use, a well-tested framework handles situations you haven't even anticipated yet. Because reasoning transfers, not just the answer. And that's what a closing decision bottleneck actually looks like. Not perfect handover on day one, systematic improvement until the judgment lives in the system, not in you. One framework built today, tested. So, one framework built today and tested this week. Not a strategy, not something to think about and deliberate about. One framework, one decision type, one team member tests it against a real scenario before Sunday. If the answers match, you've started closing your decision bottleneck. If they don't match, bring that gap to Sunday, because Sunday we're going to go into the knowledge bottleneck, and the gap you find in your decision framework is almost always a knowledge problem sitting underneath a decision problem. Dependency score is in the description. It maps exactly where your dependency is, where your dependency is. It's concentrated across all 7 lenses. One framework this week. See you Sunday.